Only son. How's that? I'm the brother arc. Okay. I love making up words. That works. Kicking off this little bit of revelry here for Wade. This is the party that she wanted. She started when the time was evident. She said, "Now I don't want a memorial service." And my sister Amanda looked at her and said, "Mom, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be there. We have to do a memorial for the people you're leaving behind." And she goes, "Whatever. But I want a party. I want bourbon. I want good food. I want lots of laughter. I want music. I want all my friends there." And we said, "Well, okay, we'll take care of that." 9 weeks ago, she left us. It was about 19 days after she was told that she's still going to be around for a couple years. And 9 days after her 88th birthday, she took off. So the family was around her. The people that I've talked to that have lost parents, lost loved ones, are telling us that it was such a blessing that we had the ability to actually be with her at that time. So we're taking that as a blessing. That's about as sad as I want to get. So I would like to welcome everybody here. She had 3 biological children, and we tried to count the other children that are out there that we know of, and we haven't been able to come up with a hard number. So you know who you are. Let's say that. Hopefully you know who you are. But she loved every one of you all that are here, and we really want to thank you for coming. So I'd like to raise a glass to Wade. Say thank you for allowing us to spend time in your presence.
Go Big Blue!
Go Big Blue! Absolutely. So that was the toast. We're not roasting, but we are telling stories. Some of this might sound like a roast. I've spent a lot of time trying to think of what exactly the stories I was going to start out with. And this, by contract in this room, we can't dance for some reason. So we have to tell a lot of stories and laugh. And we can cry, there's tissues around. We can cry, and that's okay. But when we were meeting with the minister to talk about Dot, because she wasn't churched in her later years, I think is the proper term. So we were meeting with my minister at Highland Pres, Cynthia Campbell, and I said, you know, she led a life that mattered. Everything she did mattered. She either did it for her family or she volunteered, but she didn't waste a lot of time just sitting around feeling sorry for herself that she got to be 88 years old. Right after she died, I had this weird little dream, and my wife laughs at me a lot because I wake up in the morning and the first thing I say to her was like, "I had this really weird dream, but I had this dream, and I had dreamed that I got a tattoo." And that's something that my mom and I joked about a lot. She actually wanted me to get a tattoo when I was 40. She said she'd pay for it. So what would it be? I mean, what mom does that? But luckily I shrugged that off at 40, and she kind of mentioned it again at 55, which was 5 years ago. But it just that kind of stuck. But for some reason I had this dream that I had a tattoo, and I had it on my wrist right here. That when I needed to be a grown-up, I could put a watch on so it would cover it up, but it was just something, and I couldn't really remember if it was a word or a symbol or something, but it was just kind of weird. So I started talking to Laurie and Jess and Max and everybody, and like, well, what would it be? What word would you use to describe Dot? And the word matter kept coming up. So I have a tattoo now on my wrist that says matter to remind me to do things that matter. And there's 3 other gentlemen in the room that have followed me in that quest. There's some bracelets that are being worn by the Wade women that say matter to remind them to do things that matter. And you all have blue silicone bracelets on the table that say matter for you to take this and to you remember, do something else for somebody else. Don't spend the time sitting around taking care of yourself only. Do something else for somebody else. So again, let's raise the glass to things that matter. And for Wade. So now the stories. She was an amazing woman. She volunteered constantly. She was, I was the third child. Good, I didn't have to say any more than that. There were times that I was kind of third. The one thing that work with me. The one thing that comes to mind, the story, I don't actually remember it because I don't know, I was born at a very early age or something, but the story in the family was that Mom had appointments, you know, meetings, stuff going on at Children's Hospital or at the school or church or whatever, but I had to get to kindergarten. And I took afternoon kindergarten. This was back in the day where you had morning kindergarten and afternoon kindergarten. Our elementary school was just down the street. So I had to get to kindergarten right after noon. But she had a meeting. So how was I going to get to kindergarten? So she puts me in a little TV table with graham crackers and some milk and something else, turns on WHAS, because at 12:20, Barney Arnold came on to do the farm report. So she told me who Barney Arnold was, she showed me his face. When that guy starts talking, turn off the TV and go to kindergarten. So she left me alone to go to kindergarten by myself. The teachers that are in the crowd would go, oh my God, we can call CPS right now and have her arrested. But I was a free-range child before the term was actually invented. So that's my first story for Dot. So at this point, I'd like to pass the baton off to somebody, Ben or Richard. Richard, we're going to do some family time first. There's no rules here. You need to get up and get more food, get a drink, go to the bathroom, whatever. But we're going to start telling stories. So, Richard.
I'm Richard Wade. I grew up in Lexington. I'm Dot's eldest nephew, so I think I've got a little more years than anybody else, including her children. And we tried to come up with some stories that we could tell in public, but
Go ahead and tell them anyway.
But the more recent ones have been at family weddings, which have been fantastic. Our oldest son, the Dots, Dot Wade, Dot Robertson, were there, and I remember them being up all night in the bar telling stories, and my wife Mary Ann, who is sitting back here, was in there. I can't get her to tell me any of the stories. I'm an early to bed person, so I don't know what they are, but anyway, a great lady. Loved having her around the family for all those years. And if anybody can beat 69 years, 9 months, hold your hand up.
You win, you win.
You win.
Go, Ben. Go, Ben.
Hey everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I am Ben Schmitt. I am Dot's second oldest grandson. My brother Will unfortunately couldn't make it tonight. First off, I just want to say thanks to everybody for coming out. It's really heartwarming to see all the people here for my grandmother. I also had to rack my brain about an appropriate story to tell. I lived with my grandmother 2 separate times on her second floor, and things definitely got interesting a few times. I can talk about some interesting games of 36 with some added fuel, but I'll try to keep it as appropriate as possible. What I eventually settled on was the first time I toured UK. I'm about to reveal a deep, dark secret. Growing up, in even my high school days, I didn't necessarily think I was going to be going to the University of Kentucky. Didn't want to be like my family, and I originally got on the plane from Virginia just to humor her and make her happy. But she knew that one thing that would get me hooked was going to a basketball game while I was there. So she made sure my tour was arranged for a home game. She got her birthday tickets that she always got from her brother Jess and sister-in-law Davis, and made sure we were going to a good game. We were playing LSU. So we went to the campus tour, Loved it. Started thinking, hey, maybe this is a good thing. We get back in car from the campus tour, and she said, okay, now it's time for the game. Opens up her purse. There's only one ticket. She thinks to herself, racks her brain, says, I know the second ticket was in the envelope. I don't know what happened. We go over to Davis's just to check. No second ticket. So what does she do? Sends me in so I can go sit in the 11th row behind the basket while she goes over to the Hilton next door and watches it in the bar. Interesting experience. I appreciated her gratefulness. We met most of the Gardners over at Joe B's after the game. A few people here were there that day. And then right after that, we got out of town right before a blizzard hit, and I was stuck with her for an extra week because I couldn't fly home. Needless to say, I always appreciated her hospitality and everything. I know all of you did. And I would like to ask you all to raise your glasses, say thank you to my grandmother for her great hospitality and friendship and the person that she was. And thank you all for being here.
Hello, I am Wade's favorite granddaughter, but I'm also her only granddaughter. So that's what she always liked to tell me. You're my favorite. I go, but granddad, I'm your only one. Like always, had to rack the brain. What story was I going to tell? Because there's so many, but that's the most interesting part about it is everybody talks about their grandmother, and yeah, that's the one. Everybody talks about their grandmother, and I'm going, no, doesn't sound like mine at all, or anything. So the one I chose to tell was a few years ago, I can't remember how many, but she calls me up and says, Joe can get his tickets to Lady Gaga. And I'm like, okay, sure, let's go. And so, like a year in advance, she tells me this. So she's just talking it up and all this stuff, and Christmas rolls around, and I buy her Lady Gaga glasses to wear, because we're gonna go. And I keep telling her, Lady Gaga's, very avant-garde, and we need to wear something funky and because any chance I can dress up, I take it pretty much. And she's like, oh, well, I don't know, just ho-hum about the whole thing. And apparently she had been studying the music, so she was ready, and show up that night. It's right around March, so I have a St. Patrick's Day green wig on, and you'll see the pictures rolling around. I've got some kind of funky outfit, and she comes out in a big green afro, giant frilly moo-moo, and a Mardi Gras mask. And I'm like, way to one-up me. So, and Joe was in green, because it was right around St. Patrick's Day or something, so we all had green, and Dad dropped us off right in front of the Yum Center, and we walk out, and I swear to you, the second we stepped out of the car, 3 people asked for us to take a picture. Not with me, not with Joe, but with Granddad. And we could barely get to our seats because people kept stopping us to take a picture with Granddad. Not us, with her. And that's one of my favorite stories to tell when people tell grandmother stories. Oh yeah, I went to see Lady Gaga, and they're like, oh, with who? And I'm like, oh, with my grandma. And they're always like, interesting. And she knew all the words and was there. So raise a glass to interesting grandmas.
Well, those of you that don't know, the granddad whole name thing, that kind of really explains what kind of grandmother she was. She didn't want to be grandma, she didn't want to be nana, she didn't want to be any of that. Will, the oldest grandson, kind of created the granddad name, and it kind of stuck. But that's what really kind of explains what type of grandmother she was. When Jess came along, she was the only grandchild in town. So she said, you know, I'm not gonna do this babysitting thing. I don't want any babies. She said, bring her to me when she can lunch and shop. We're like, okay. So luckily, Laurie, working at the school, she did. We had a cast of babysitters handy, but when she finally, okay, Mom, we want to go see this show, or we want to do something. So we dropped Jess off, and when we were picking her up, she said, do I get a star for this? We're like, yeah, okay, sure, we'll give you a star. So that started a tradition with us that every Christmas, Jess would give Granddot a star of some kind for taking care of her and being Granddot and all that. And I look over and I see Jess wearing one of the stars that we had given her that she collected. So again, another Granddot story. So carry on. Next.
But she didn't want to be Granddot. She wanted to be Granddot.
The microphone is open. Uh-oh.
Hello. Hi, for you all who don't know me, I'm Emily Robinson. I'm Max's girlfriend of 4 years, and I've been very lucky to be adopted into this family. And lucky for me, in the 4 years, I got to know Granddot. And as many of you probably, I'm assuming, knew, as you can see from some of the pictures up here, Granddot was a horsewoman. And I myself am also a horsewoman. And I remember when Max first was going to bring me to one of the family gatherings, he said, oh, you'll have to meet Granddot. And I thought, okay, you know, I didn't think a big deal of it. He says, well, she used to ride horses when she was younger, and I show horses, and I thought, okay, sure. And so immediately when we started talking, we hit it off right away, because once you're a horse person, you're always a horse person forever. So when Granddot and I first met, I was still attending the Jefferson Community and Technical College, and I was still just trying to find my way in school, and you know, my big thing was just horses all the time, 24 hours a day or whatever. And so when it came time for me to move on from JCTC, it was, okay, well, where am I going to go for college now? And as many of you know, the Wade family is all about UK. Well, Max and I have been together for about 2 years now, and I was transferring to the University of Louisville, which is... So when I decided to, when I made this decision and got my application, I was kind of like, I got some school plans. They're just plans, and oh, okay, where are you going to school? And U of L, it's no big deal though, it's no big deal, it's no big thing. So, you know, oh, this whole big thing, oh, U of L, and blah, blah, blah. But everybody was really nice to me about going to U of L. Well, I was talking to Granddot about it, which was terrifying, by the way. So let me tell you about my plans for U of L. It's a great school, really, I promise. I told her that I was going in for equine business and administration and that I was joining the saddle seat team at the university. And that was when our connections over horses really began to blossom. She came out one day and saw my brand new rescued, skinny, emaciated colt and watched me work him and was telling me all these great tips about working my horse and all this stuff, and about being on the team and giving me tips about riding and all these great, like, true classic horsewoman tips. So it's just so touching to receive. And I remember one day I went to the Schmitts for one of the family dinner outings, and it was a little bit after I had started at the University of Louisville, and she goes, Emily, will you come out to my car and help me bring some stuff in? I have some stuff I need to bring upstairs, I need you to help me carry it. I said, okay, sure. So we went out downstairs and we went out to her car, and she goes, I got you a little present, it's not a big deal, but I thought something you might like, and if you don't like it, if it doesn't fit, you know, you can just give it back to me, it's whatever, it's no big deal. And she pulls out a University of Louisville t-shirt, and she hands it to me, and I said, did you buy this? And she goes, yes. I said, did you buy it in public? And she goes, yeah. I'm like, with other people around? Yes, Emily, I bought it, you know, I bought this for you. And I was so touched, because I knew what that meant to go into. It meant she had to go somewhere with U of L stuff and like pay US dollars in currency to buy something with the University of Louisville across it. And she handed it to me and she said to me, you know, no matter what school you go to, I think it's really important that you find that sense of pride and you have that same sense of that family that we felt going to UK. And I'm just really proud of you for what you're doing with the team. And I think that's really important, special. And I remember that was just such a touching moment for me, and a moment where I really felt a part of the Wade family. So I ask that we all raise our glasses to true Louisville, Kentucky horsewomen. Thank you all.
I stayed single till I was 43 years old. I was living in Seattle, Washington at the time. I called home. It had been Sadie Hawkins' day. Paul, put your fingers in your ears. And the reason I'm telling this story is so many people have talked about my mother being a free thinker and a woman before her time and those kind of things. So, and I called home and I was just totally bent out of shape because the man of the year, I had proposed to him on Sadie Hawkins' day and he had said no. She said, "What is this with you and chasing this guy? Do you want to have a baby?" I said, "No." She says, "If you want to have a baby, just go on and have a baby." To Dot.
Bess. And I will never forget the moment I met Dot. I think it was like in 1990, and I just come back from graduate school in New England doing a graduate program in landscape design. And I was back in Louisville, and I think I was talking at a garden club. And after it was over, and chit-chat, and I turned, and there's this woman wearing a full-length cape. And she came up to me and she said, "I'd like to be your friend." And sure enough, she became my very dear friend for all those years. So that was the first thing she said to me. The last thing she said to me was, "I love you very much." And I think the last time I saw her, she said that to me about 5 times. And it's really had an impact on my life and making me kind of wake up and try to say that more often to people that I love. It was such a gift. And I think that I would just keep it at that because I'm still sort of in control here. But I just have never had a friend like Dot. I mean, it was like sometimes she could be like my older sister. Sometimes it was kind of like, you know, being a stand-in mom, which there were some years that I was appreciative of. Sometimes, overall, though, I think she was just my very, very special friend, and I will never forget her, and I know that you all feel the same. So go home and tell somebody you love them.
You're here. Dot.
Hi, my name is Cathy Hinklin Thompson. I've known Dot for 59 years. I grew up on Kingston Avenue. Our mothers were very good friends. I hung out at the Wades a lot. I used to play with Bill Wade when he was a little baby, and we just bounce him around and all kinds of things. We had more fun with him. But anyway, I've got 2 Dot stories. And the first one was when I was 6 years old. How many of you remember T-Bar-B? Yeah. I was on T-Bar-B on my 6th birthday. And I wanted to be with Randy Asher, not Cactus. Because I thought Randy was pretty hot. But anyway, you know, what did I know? Anyway, so, of course, I was in front of Cactus. And I looked around, and Cactus had not a white mustache, but a blue mustache, which was very bizarre to me. But of course, the early days of TV, the white mustache would have glared too much. So anyway, so I refused to talk or say hello to my friends and family, and I stood there and said nothing. So as I was walking off, Cactus said, "Hey kid, come back when you're 16. My father was not very happy to hear that. But anyway, the next day I was hanging out at the Wades, and Dot said, "Well, why didn't you say hello to everybody? You just stood there with your teeth in." And so that, so I remember thinking, that really was not very nice of me, just to stand there and not say anything. So that's my first Dot story. My second Dot story is in high school. In the 60s, girls wore a lot of eye makeup and all sorts of hair up and all kinds of things. So I would put my eyeliner on only on the top lid. And so Dot would always say to me, "Why don't you put eyeliner on the bottom of your eye too?" And so years later, whenever I would put on my eye makeup, and eyeliner in particular, I would always think of Dot. So I thought of Dot like a lot. And so tonight I put on eyeliner, and I have, if you'll notice, I have eyeliner on the bottom. Also. So I would like to salute Dot. I loved her. She was one of my mom's best friends, and she was wonderful.
So my name is Jarrod Lackey, and I will probably not stay under control for this. I was lucky enough to be one of those children that was non-biological, which doesn't mean that it's bad to be biological. But I was in that lucky group of people that she really took care of. Yeah. I moved in beside Dot in 1998, and we were trucking all this heavy stuff up the stairs, and Joe brings over a plastic bag with 3 Budweisers and 3 cups, and a little note that said, "I'm Dot Wade. How about dinner on my patio tomorrow night?" And we thought, we're in the money now, and we just moved in, and we got some lady that's going to cook dinner for us. But, well, I did. I saw her sitting there. It was from the second floor, so I was thinking, that's really a nice patio over there. But we became fast friends, and a couple months later, this is my first story, it's beginning now. A couple months later, Dot had something to do at the women's club, not this one, but the less fancy women's club down the street. And we had to go get some forsythia, and I volunteered to just go off for the day, whatever. So we drive down towards town, and she pulls her Jeep over onto the grass near one of the on-ramps. I thought, what are we doing?
Highway robbery.
And she gets out, and we walk over to the side of the highway where the on-ramp is, and she hands me snippers, and she got her pair of snippers, and she said, "Well, start getting some." So we're snipping forsythia off. So we've got a couple of big bundles, and I said, Dot's from here to me to the piano. And I said, "So what are we going to do next?" She said, "We're going to run like hell." So I got my bushel of forsythia, and we ran back to the car, and I jumped in, and we drove off and went to the women's club, and she did her little arrangement. And that was only about 6 months after I met her. So we did a lot of mischievous things together. Another quick story. I needed to make fake parking passes for the green lot for the football games back before they had numbers. And because we were college kids and we didn't have the money to get green lot passes, but we wanted to have our tailgate. So Dot took me around to all of her arts and crafts places, trying to find the correct green, because we had borrowed a pass from someone, and she and I and Ryan Johnson drove around all day trying to find the right color of green paper to recreate this thing. And then we went home and we had some printouts of the copies, and then we cut the little letters out and pasted on. I still have that. That fake parking pass, and it worked wonderfully, and it wouldn't have worked as good if Dot had to take us around to find the exact right green paper to do it on.
I'll get to that.
Well, now they're numbered, so you can't use them. But anyway, oh wait, I've got notes here. I know. Okay, so Dot knew I wanted to move to the beach at some point, and we had gone back and forth about it for years, and the last time I saw her, this is unsolicited information, we were just sitting there, I talked for 4 hours with her, and right before I left, she grabbed my hand. And she said, move to the beach, teach your daughter how to dive, let her ride her bike to the beach. So, last week, my wife and I put an offer on a house at the beach. That's the best information I can get.
Everyone else had one, so I thought, well, maybe I should bring one too. Hi, my name is Kenneth Cox. I met Dot many, many years ago, actually, 27 years ago. I think around 1988. Joe may be able to verify that. I may not be as funny as I usually am, because I think I want to convey something I think that's really important to understand about Dot. I think I fit in that group of people that are family outside of the family. I'm the favorite. When I met her at her mailbox. I had just moved in next door. Joe Banks had told me about an indie apartment. I needed a place. So I had just moved in and I met her. She was getting her mail out, and I think I spent 20 minutes telling her my whole life right there in her mailbox. And so then she started inviting me over for breakfast, and I was working at the time. I was part-time in college. I didn't really have a very strong family background. Didn't really have a lot of great supports. And she started really looking out for me, and we started talking about, well, maybe I shouldn't be working full-time. Maybe I should go to school full-time. And so she started talking me through those things. And she said, well, I'll help you cook. If you decide to not work full-time and go to school full-time, I'll help you cook. And so that was the beginning of a lifetime, the next 27 years of her always reaching her hand out to me to either tell me, that she'll talk me through something, or she'll help me through something. There's been tough times in my life where I haven't always been the person I think that she would have wanted me to be. I remember once when we were in San Francisco, which was I spent about 6 years there, and this was after college. I did get through college, thanks to Dot. I actually ended up moving into her house and studying on her kitchen table for 4 years. You could probably stop by for coffee in the morning at her house. She would fix me coffee, I would study all day, and you could come back by and I would still be there. I would see her in the morning, I would see her at night for quite a few years. She came and visited me in San Francisco. It was kind of a low time for me. We were on the sidewalk and we were saying something about going to lunch, and I pulled my wallet out, and she said, "Don't pull that out, and I don't want that dust flying up in my face." So she always had a good sense of humor, but she was always very, very tough when she needed to be tough, and she was always very loving when she needed to be loving. She always told me I had a place to come to. During those tough years in San Francisco, I would call her and I'd go, I want to come home, and she'd go, come home. I want you to come here. And so I've spent time in many other places, Chicago, New York, and she's been the home for me, and I think she's done that for a lot of people. I'm one of the guys with the Matter tattoos, one of the three. She was someone who always told me that I was smart as her favorite, remember that, guys, and that I could do anything, and she bragged about me all the time. I'm actually surprised when I talked to some of her friends, and she's like, I know you, and it's like, wow. Hopefully I get the good stories from Doc, because she always she just either tells good stories about folks or she tells bad stories. There's never really an in-between. So anyway, she always made me feel like I mattered. She always made me feel like that I was important, and I just want to say how much I miss her, but she's in my heart every day, and I try to give a little bit of that to other folks. So thank you.
This will only take about 20 minutes. That's great. I'm Dominic Gratto. I have known Dot, or I knew Dot. We met back in 2010 when I joined Botanica. And I don't have any one story. I think every experience spending time with Dot was a story in and of itself. I mean, she was so spunky and funny and witty and a phenomenal cook. We got spoiled at every board meeting because she would cook for us. And I think just seeing the fullness with which Dot lived her life was a real inspiration. And I mean, she was just great. She was incredible. I mean, I remember her telling all these crazy stories, which I wish I had been at the parties because they sounded phenomenal. But you know, hearing this woman who's in her 80s telling me stories about how she has dinner parties with people until 2 in the morning, and I'm thinking, I haven't even stay up until 2 in the morning. And you've got 50 years on me. Like, she's just, she was great. She was phenomenal. And if I was ever a woman in my 80s, I would want to be Dot. She was phenomenal. And we miss her dearly. And I think my only regret is that I didn't get to know her sooner. I've only had 5 years. You guys have had lots and lots and lots. And it's been great hearing the stories. So here's my non-existent glass to Dot.
I'm Joe Banks, and I moved into Dot's June 1988. I moved from up the block at 1456, and my old roommate Gary had found the apartment because he knew Donald Duncan, and he says, oh, there's this great apartment next to Donald's. This lady, she's got this great 3rd floor apartment, and it's great. It's got a spiral staircase, and it's got loft and all this. I'm like, wow, that sounds really cool. And so he's telling Dot that he would like to maybe rent it, and she's like, well, don't you think that your friend should see it first? And he goes, oh, he'll like it. So this, Gary's told me all this. So I'm moving in and getting to know Dot, and I drank coffee, but coffee has a whole new meaning now with Dot. I mean, that's where our friendship started. We sat down, we would just drink coffee, and every morning. And I worked at UPS, and she wanted to hear about UPS, and she would tell me stories about her husband working at Philip Morris, and she was so involved in that as far as how she took care of home and he worked, and she would help me and guide me about how to handle as I wanted to go into management and supervising stuff, and she just really supported me and gave me this aspect of how to do things, and I didn't realize I didn't know it. And I didn't realize that our friendship was growing the way it was growing at all. I just, it was just like, wow, we're just doing this. And at some point, probably about 2 years into our friendship, I think she thought it, and I thought it, but we didn't think it together. Driving Miss Daisy. Okay, I have not watched that movie since. I've seen it, but I thought of so many moments with her that we were like that. She could be crotchety, and I'd be all like, "Hey, lady, quit it," you know. But we really enjoyed seeing the reaction of us. You know, when we would go somewhere, on the road, going to Amanda's in DC, you know, stopping off somewhere to get a cup of coffee or something. At first I didn't really think about it, but then I started realizing, yeah, it really was noticeable. What are these two doing together? What is this about? Is she okay? You know, we enjoyed that because we truly knew. And I remember riding once, it's like we did it so many times, going to DC. It was our favorite thing, you know, oh, we're going to DC, I love it. And we're driving along, and I said, Doc, do you know, this is like a 13-hour drive, and we have not stopped talking. We just kept talking, and we realized we really like talking to each other. And we could talk forever and ever and ever. I'm going to leave it at that, because I'm going to keep talking to her. All right? Thanks.
Dot was my cool aunt. I'm Lewis Gardner. I'm bringing greetings from my dad, her brother, my mom, Davis. And Dot was always, she and her husband, Bill, they were always there for you. You know, if you needed something, you were locked out of your car, thing wouldn't start, you know, they'd throw in, go at it. They were truly wonderful. I look back at best times of my life, and I think I'd really like to be back in Huntsville with all of us all being and not having to be an adult anymore, you know.
Ride the pony.
Ride the horses, stand up in the tree house and sing silly songs, do all those great things. So here's to Dot. She was wonderful. Don't have a glass, but I have a camera. So she always encouraged me and always loved me and always loved her. So thank you all so much for being her friends and being with her when we couldn't. And salute. Salute.
Oh my. I'm Mike Johnson, and my son was one of the many renters for Dot. And so when we come from a small town, Seymour, Indiana, and you know, my son, my youngest, the baby in the family, is moving to big city, right? So we had many concerns, and one of those was, you know, where's he going to live, and what's the landlord going to be like? And so I went down with my fatherly, you can imagine how this went, right? So I'm asking all these probing questions, right, Dot? And before long I realized that I'm not interviewing her, she's interviewing me. And so we went in and we talked, and finally she says, I said something about, well, what about the lease, Dot? And she looked at me and she says, oh, there's no lease. That way, if I don't like you, you're out of here. And if you don't like me, you're free to leave. And I thought, cool. So, but I will say that I didn't realize when Ryan started there and started renting that we were going to get much more than a landlord. Dot, don't do this, man. Dot said, you know, there's one rule. Nobody's in my kitchen but me, right? And Ryan came home one day and he said, you know, Dot's been teaching me how to cook. She's got all these great recipes, and you know, food was everything for Dot. And Ryan would say, well, you know,
4 o'clock in the morning, we got in and there was cookies on the stairway for us. And Dot would have made cookies. And then she'd have him down for meals. And she'd have Jarrod over next door. Jarrod lived next door, he wasn't a renter. And she had Jarrod over. And Ryan really developed a very fond, Dot became a grandmother to him. And he loved her so dearly. So, cheers to Dot. And to Ryan.
Okay. First of all, Dot never met a stranger. She could always start a conversation with everybody. That was amazing to me. I'm Jimmy Scobee. I'm one of the adopted children.
Really old.
First. About the time that Dot was moving from Kingston to 4th Street, a bunch of us adopted children, and Billy, he was there, took her to dinner for her birthday. And we're sitting in the restaurant, and the waitress commented to her about 6 or 7 of us kids sitting around with her. And she said, "These are all my children." And the waitress smiled and started to walk away. And then the comment was made, and they all had different fathers.
Max Wade. I'm the last of the marked men. I think I couldn't think of one specific story to really tell, but I always knew that Granddad was a very unique woman. But it wasn't really until I started going to college that I really learned the extent of how different she was. Because I started going to WKU about 4 years ago, and it took her a while to get over me going to a red school. But